First time I heard of Alien was through Entertainment Tonight. I had watched an episode of Entertainment Tonight around the time of the release of Aliens, and they had this piece on Aliens. And during this, I guess, promo for the release of Aliens, they had shown scenes from the original Alien, and I had never seen scenes from the original Alien before, and I remember being captivated by the imagery in that I saw from Alien, and particularly the scene that caught my eye the most was the scene with Ripley, versus the alien at the end of the film, and the scene where she shoots it with a spirit gun and it gets jettisoned into space, and how it's just like eerily floating out there, trying to get back into the ship, all that. Like, it just seared into my consciousness. I gotta see this movie one day. Not long after I saw that piece on Entertainment Tonight, I saw Aliens, and it completely rocked my world. There's my cinematic mind before Aliens, and there's my cinematic mind after Aliens. And I'll get more into that when I talk about Aliens in the next video that I do, when I talk about it at length. And I really wanted to see Alien after I saw Aliens, but at that time we didn't have a VCR, so it would be quite a while before I eventually would see Alien. And eventually I did see Alien a couple of years later. The thing that really just drove me to I gotta see the first film once and for all was I had gotten these cards called Fright Flick cards, and they were these cards that were produced by Topps. Cards based on characters from various horror movies that came out in the 80s. Well, most of them came out in the 80s. Horror films like Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, and 3, American Werewolf in London, Fright Night, Day of the Dead, Pumpkinhead, and Alien. Predator 2. Well, the first Predator, not Predator 2. And it had the first Alien, and it had Aliens as well. And I remember seeing the cards, that was for Aliens, and it just I don't know, just captured my attention in such a major way. In that, I had watched Aliens a lot by this point. I had gotten these cards because I had a copy of Aliens on VHS. I noticed that the alien in the first film, which is known as the Big Chap, looks quite different from the xenomorphs in Cameron's movie. And it just it looks similar in one way, but looks very different in another. And it did look I don't know, not as modern, which is crazy to say. It's only 7 years difference between the two. You can definitely tell it was older technology that crafted the alien suit. It wasn't as advanced, but it still looked awesome though. And not long after, I had rented Alien, and let's just say, it didn't rock my world at first in the same way that Aliens did. In fact, when I saw Alien for the first time, I was underwhelmed, to say the least. At least in parts, I was. Alien was a very, very slow film for me. I mean, when I first saw Alien, I was only 10 when I first saw Alien. And it was just a huge difference between Alien and Aliens in terms of its the pacing. Aliens itself also has a deliberate pace, particularly if you're watching the extended version of Aliens. But even at a more deliberate pace than a lot of films of its type, it's still I don't know, there's still a propulsion behind it. Alien, by comparison, not to say that there isn't some kind of driving force behind it, but it's definitely even takes a more slower approach than Aliens. And it doesn't have as much action as Aliens, and there's definitely a point in Alien where once you get to Kane's death, it just keeps going and going and going. But until it gets to that point, there's a lot of build up, which was fantastic. That's why I love the movie. But when you're 10 years old, you don't want to see a whole ton of build up that seemingly doesn't go anywhere, particularly when it just, I don't know, just the type of slowness in Alien is again, from the perspective of a 10-year-old, you might find boring. Then again, I've heard of like, people who were around that age and loved Alien from the jump, like every single frame of it, and didn't find it to be slow. But I did. I thought it moved at a snail's pace. I didn't find what was happening particularly interesting. And I think I remember me fast forwarding after a certain point in Alien, like during the first half. Probably a lot of it was when they're on, maybe not so much when they're on, LV 426 or what become to be LV 426. But definitely the stuff on the ship I didn't think was particularly interesting. Pretty much, except for the stuff with Kane and the space jockey and the egg chamber, I pretty much was bored with Alien until the famous scene with everybody's at the table, and Kane gives birth to a nightmare. The rest of Alien I did think was engaging though, and from that point, like after, like I said, after Kane's death, like I was like fully engaged with the movie, and by the end of the film, like I liked it. I liked it quite a bit, but I also was like underwhelmed by it. I don't want to say disappointed. I think that might be the wrong word, but let's just say I found the experience be lacking to a degree. I did love the climax of the film. I did love the horror in the film. I thought the deaths were creative. I loved the look of the film and loved the performances. I just thought that the pacing was just really, really off. But I definitely wanted to see Alien again. I can't remember if I watched it a second time when I first rented it, but it's like overall, like it was a positive experience with I guess some caveats. But it's but in comparison to Alien though, there's no question at that time I thought Aliens was clearly the much better film, hands down. The next time I would see Alien again would be that same year, the later summer of that same year, and it came on ABC 7. It was on a Sunday, and even though I knew that airing on broadcast television, they were going to cut all the good stuff. Well, maybe not all the good stuff, but definitely the objectionable stuff, like by network standards of the day. I still was excited to watch Alien again, even though I was underwhelmed by it. And I went ahead and I saw Alien again. I don't know if it was for the second or third time, and it just clicked for me. I don't know why. The network airing, the edited version, the censored version, clicked for me while watching it in full, unedited. but yeah, like watching it again on ABC 7, the film fully clicked. Like I liked it from beginning to end. And yeah, I wasn't underwhelmed by it. I fully enjoyed it. And I don't know, sometimes you just need what what a film actually is. If you have expectations for a film to be a certain way, and then you get something different than what you envisioned for the film to be, even if what the film gives you is actually great, you may not find it to be so. And sometimes you need just some time away for the film, a second viewing, a subsequent viewing for you to like fully appreciate it, because that any subsequent viewing, like what you're getting into. So there's so you won't be disappointed by what's coming, because you already know what's going to happen. You already know how the film's going to be, and you can fully judge the film by what it actually is, or what instead of what you thought it was going to be. And yeah, I became a big fan of Alien. I still thought at that time though that Aliens was hands down the superior film. Now Alien is back then and to this day is considered to be one of the scariest films ever made. Probably more so back then. I don't hear as many people say that now. But certainly back then it was considered to be across the board one of the scariest films ever made. And I wasn't scared by it. I wasn't scared by it by all. I wasn't scared of it at all. Aliens like scared me watching it for the first time, but Alien didn't. However, it's weird with Alien because when I watched it, it didn't scare me, but it actually scared me after the fact. I already talked a little bit about the story before in a previous video, but yeah, like Alien was the only film that scared me after the fact. I only have a few films that scared me while I watched it. Aliens is one, Reanimator is another, and I'm probably forgetting a film or two that scared me during the first rewatch. But it's like only a handful of films, and I was like a little kid when that happened. I haven't been scared by a film during watching it or after watching it since Alien. Horror films just don't scare me. They disturb me. They unsettle me, but like they don't scare me. I'm not frightened of watching a horror film. Now, video games are different. Video games, at least the right horror video game, can definitely scare me. I found a recent remake of Silent Hill 2 to be quite scary at times. Not that I was like shaking in my chair playing it, but yeah, there are like moments like, yeah, I'm like kind of scared here. The original Silent Hill 2 did that to me too, and there's a few other video games that done that, like the Resident Evil 2 original and remake that scared me. But yeah, horror films just don't scare me. But yeah, going back to Alien, so it was I think it might have been that same day, that same night, when I watched Alien for the first time. I can't remember. It wasn't too long after that if it wasn't, and I was in my bedroom and my brothers were asleep and I just couldn't sleep. Like, this was like after midnight, and I kept thinking of that scene when the alien was outside the ship, trying to get back in after Ripley had hit it with a spear gun. And it just, like, the image of the alien just being out there, in space and trying to desperately get back inside, I guess that the equivalent, the space equivalent of a spaceship equivalent of a lifeboat. Yeah, just trying to get back into the ship, and just that image of the alien just trying to get back in, inside, to cause more harm to Ripley. I don't know, it just freaked me out. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't go to sleep, and I remember like leaving the lights on in my room, and that didn't help. I remember like turning on the TV in my room, and I remember what was on TV. It was Glow, gorgeous ladies of wrestling, and like maybe like I didn't watch that too often, but maybe like looking at this will distract me, and it didn't really help that much. I just had to basically lay there and just deal with it until the images didn't bother me anymore, and then at a certain point, like, I fell asleep. But yeah, I was up for quite a while, like, just anxious, like filled with cortisol. Like, it's just, yeah. So that's, I don't know if anybody else out there had experience where a horror film like didn't scare them while watching it, but scared them after they watched it, and not through a nightmare, but like being awake by just thinking of the imagery. I don't know, but that was definitely quite an experience that I've never forgotten, and that was the last time that a horror film had ever scared me. Over the years, what was once a movie that I liked but far from loved now has become one of my favorite pieces of media ever created. Ridley Scott really just hit a supreme home run, like directing this movie, and everybody else who contributed to this film too. I mean, just like I said before, the acting is fantastic. I mean, of course, first and foremost, Sigourney Weaver as one of the greatest characters of all creation, Ripley. Like, it all starts with this movie. She is just fantastic in this film. Sigourney Weaver, the character of Ripley, is just fantastic. This is, Ripley is, the mold maker here. Just, I could go on and on all day how much I love Ellen Ripley. She's just the absolute best. Yeah. Ellen Ripley is a perfect character. Sigourney Weaver plays this role perfectly. The cast is one of the greatest casts ever assembled for this film. You know, you got Yaphet Kotto, Veronica Cartwright, Ian Holm, Tom Skerritt, Harry Dean Stanton, John Hurt. I mean, this cast is flawless. And their characters are some of the greatest characters ever created for screen. And even though you don't know much about their characters, they feel so much like real people. They act like real people would act in a situation for the most part. Yeah, it's just so authentic, this film. Like the way how, Ridley Scott just crafted this movie, just, basically space truckers, venturing through the cosmos, doing their job, it just is something. It's like this blue collar, workman like quality to this film that you just never saw in sci-fi horror before or prior to this. I mean, space had a certain feel before Alien. I mean, it's clear Alien's taken some inspiration from various films, 2001 and just a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, this whole, again, like working man's crew, blue collar crew and aesthetic, how, in Alien, everything looks like it's been worn down and just it's just everything just like, I don't want to say it's grimy, but there's definitely like grit. This film is very gritty. The aesthetic is very gritty. The interior, the Nostromo, like this is a ship that has seen, like, it's been through a lot of wear and tear. It's not perfect. It's not sterile. It's not clean like a lot of sci-fi, like in terms of like the spaceships and the aesthetics was before Alien. Yeah, it's just there's a realness to Alien and like I said, authenticity to Alien, and I love so much. The film is wonderfully shot by Derek Van Lint. You got the awesomely atmospheric score by Jerry Goldsmith. You got the great and terrible creature created by H.R. Giger. Just such a master artist, H.R. Giger, in his work. God rest his soul. He is definitely missed. I could go on and on about every single aspect of Alien. I also need to give credit to the man who played the alien himself, Bodeho. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Also, God rest his soul as well. He was just, people talk about the performances in Alien, like how great they are, but you don't hear enough mention about his performance. Without his performance, that movie would not be what it be. That movie would not be what it is without his legendary performance as the Xenomorph. The film's special effects, the costume design, everything about Alien is flawless. I wish I had more to say about Alien, because this film has had a profound impact on me, to say the least, and it continues to have a profound impact on me. But kind of running out things to say. I will say this though: years ago, if I was asked, what was the better film, Alien or Aliens? Like I said, Aliens was the better movie. Now I can't say that. They're both tied now, Alien and Aliens. There are times that I think that Alien is the better movie. I mean, Alien has come such a long way from, being way below Aliens to now possibly being the better film than Aliens. And it's not that my love for Aliens has lessened over the years. It's just that my love for Alien has really grown, a lot. It's really grown a lot for this film. I don't know. I wish the series would return more to, the horror show that the first Alien is, a full-blown horror show. Yeah, it's definitely sci-fi as well, but there's no question that Alien is a horror film with like a sci-fi framework. And that's not to say that Aliens isn't a horror film. Aliens is definitely a horror film. I mean, everyone's always saying that, You know, it's like action, and yeah, it is a lot of it, but a lot of it's still horror. Like, it's not full blown horror like the first Alien, but it's Aliens is unquestionably a horror film. James Cameron considers it a horror film. I consider it a horror film. Just a horror film that has like other elements as well. Um, but the first Alien is, you know, pure nightmare fuel. The first Alien, and I would love for the series to go back in that pure nightmare fuel direction. Now, recently you've had, you know, Alien Earth, you know, the FX series that did steer more in the direction of the original Alien in terms of his, definitely in terms of his aesthetics, in terms of tone. But even that, it's like, no, like to me, the series ultimately failed in capturing that full blown nightmare vibe of the first Alien. Like it captured it, you know, at first in the beginning of the series, but by by the time the series ends, it just, I don't know. I just think that the series was a huge disappointment after having such a, you know, I would say compelling first two episodes. Like the series had a lot of promise, but then by the end, it just totally just faltered. I am not looking forward to the second season. Like the series turned the xenomorph into a joke. I don't know, I'm not gonna really get into it too much here, but like, no, I want a movie to go back to the uncomfortable, unsettling, skin crawling intensity, not afraid to offend an audience, um, feel like objective of the first movie. I wanted to go ahead and do that, and to me, like, and I want Alien to be scary again. And even though, you know, like I said, horror films don't scare me anymore, but they certainly, again, they can definitely get under my skin. And yes, the xenomorph, you know, it's been so ridiculously overexposed to just movies, video games, TV. It's never going to scare audiences the way that it first did, you know, all those decades ago. But I still believe there's still areas that's been unmined to make the xenomorph and the world that the xenomorph inhabits and everyone else who inhabits that world frightening again. And it could be done. And I hope one day someone does it, and hopefully it happens soon. But if, you know, some reason nobody does, at least we'll always have the original film to fall back on, because it is a true horror masterpiece. Because Alien is truly the stuff that bad dreams are made of.